What is the precise difference between wince/flinch/grimace? Initially I started looking for the difference between winching and flinching and came to no real answer, as some sites defined the terms as synonymous with shirking away. Then other searches resulted in wincing being described solely as a facial expression, followed by others saying this is totally false and that that's a grimace, without offering any real clarification. From what I could piece together, I came to the conclusion that A. Flinching is more subtle and doesn't necessarily have any facial expression. B. Wincing is similar, although accompanied by a visibly perturbed facial expression. C. A grimace is only a facial shift, but one that's worse than a wince. I'm not really sure if any of this is correct, however. Also, I can't seem to find an exact explanation of how grimacing and wincing differ, or the exact situation one might be applied to, as some dictionaries said grimacing can be a sign of disapproval, which I don't see, but perhaps I'm exaggerating the expression in my mind. I always imagined grimacing as being a bit worse than wincing, perhaps an opening of the mouth up to the gums, while wincing would only be a few creases in the nose, or something. But again, if you Google the expression you'll get a variety of very pictures for both words, or worse, the same ones. The weird thing is I can even think of books when these words were used interchangeably, which only adds to my confusion as a non-native speaker. So to sum up, I really have two questions. What are the exact differences between the three terms, and in what situations are they best applicable? What's the difference between flinching and wincing as far as facial shifts go, assuming there are any?
My opinion. A wince is a facial or bodily expression of pain, disgust, or regret. A grimace is a facial expression that usually suggests disgust or pain, but sometimes comic exaggeration. To flinch is to pull away suddenly or recoil when something frightens or hurts you. He was so tough, I thought he'd never flinch.
I would be skeptical of any site that defines anything as synonymous with shirking away, since that phrase makes no sense in English. Shirking means avoiding a duty, and is unconnected with facial expressions. Grimacing is all about facial expression, basically on the spectrum between disapproval/dislike/disgust/revulsion. The thing shared by wincing and flinching is that they are basically pain responses. Almost the same, but not quite. One nuance is that wincing is more about actual pain received. Pain here subsumes the mental sort. People even wince at bad puns, whereas flinching is about avoidance of anticipated pain. In some contexts it is considered cowardly, so that unflinching becomes a word for courage and determination, sometimes ruthlessness, whereas if there is such a thing as unwincing, it's less common and a lot less likely to be heard in e.g. patriotic or revolutionary rhodomantade. You ever had someone touch your eyeball? You can let them do it without flinching? It's not easy. There is no obligation to have any facial expression when flinching. The body part under threat is withdrawn, that's all. Put your hand on a hot plate, and you'll surely flinch. You may wince as well if it burns you. You don't have to grimace. I see this overlaps on Josh, who wasn't there when I started to compose.
Since you've looked through various source material, I'll avoid throwing dictionary terms at you and state this as I see it, which may not be how others see it. But I will involve the supposed etymology of the words. Flinch: if I act like I'm going to punch you and you flinch, that means you moved your body in a twitch-like manner, in this instance away from me. The same applies if someone jumps from behind a bush and says boo. It is probably from the old French flenchir, to bend. Etymology of flinch. Wince: I usually think of this as a facial reaction, as far as modern usage. In my thinking it involves squinting, or averting the eyes while making a grimace, and is often an involuntary reaction to something unfortunate that has happened to someone or something in front of you. Before the Anglo-French winchir, to recoil suddenly, it was probably from the old French genchir, turn aside, and may involve the body, hiding the face, or turning the head, but again I would think that's secondary to the facial expression. Etymology of wince. Grimace supposedly traces back to Old Saxon grima, mask, and is purely a facial distortion. It is a caricature of disgust. It can be similar to a wince, or even used purposefully to make a face at someone. Etymology of grimace.
Josh61 already called this out in a comment, but since you ask, what are the exact differences between the three terms, and in what situations are they best applicable? I wanted to call more attention to another, metaphorical meaning of flinch. 1.1. Flinch from, avoid doing or becoming involved in, something, through fear or anxiety. I rarely flinch from a fight when I'm sure of myself. Flinch def. 1.1. Oxford Dictionaries, Oxford Dictionary of American English, ND Web. The 8th of May, 2015. In this sense, flinching is commonly used in the context of backing down, relenting, surrendering, to balk. It can be used when you are described a meta-confrontation, like a negotiation, a business or diplomatic deal of some kind. It can be used to describe behaviors anthropomorphized entities like countries, states, or corporations. Wincing is a poor synonym in this context, and grimace I have never heard used to describe anything other than a bodily reaction. You would have to construct a more complicated metaphor to describe an organizational wince or grimace.
If you want to support the channel, please consider liking and subscribing.